60 seconds. That's all the time Caitlin Stewart had to decide if she was willing to throw her body between a dying crime lord and the men who wanted him dead. The Sapphire Gala had been champagne and polite laughter just moments before. Politicians in tailored suits, CEOs clinking glasses in the heart of Los Angeles. The kind of wealth that moved through rooms like expensive perfume. Caitlin had been serving that wealth, invisible in her black vest and white shirt. Just another shadow carrying trays of golden bubbles to people who never looked her in the eye. Then she passed the service corridor. Then she heard the voices. 신공덕은 활성화됐다. 드래곤은 60초 안에 쓰러진다. 목격자는 없다. The neurotoxin is active. The dragon falls in 60 seconds. No witnesses. The words were Korean. Not the formal Seoul dialect of K-dramas, but the rough, coastal cadence of Busan. The same dialect her father had spoken during his military posting. The same rhythm that still lived in the back of her throat from childhood streets she'd run through half a world away. Caitlin froze. Her pulse hammered against her wrists. The men didn't notice her. 2 figures in designer tuxedos. Faces hard and cold, checking something small and silver in their palms. Silencers. She should have kept walking. Should have pretended she heard nothing. Understood nothing. But her eyes drifted past them, through the velvet archway, and locked onto the man stumbling into the shadows. Jung Sung-ho. She didn't know his name yet. Didn't know that the tabloids called him the Dragon. That his empire stretched from Seoul to Los Angeles. That the tattoo hidden beneath his collar had made grown men weep. All she saw was a man in a $1,000 suit clutching his throat, his breathing shallow, his legs buckling beneath him like a building losing its foundation. The assassins moved. Caitlin's tray slipped from her hands. The crystal shattered against marble. A sound like breaking stars, loud enough to make heads turn, loud enough to buy her 3 seconds of distraction. She didn't think. Thinking was a luxury she couldn't afford. She ran. Her shoes hit the carpet hard. The alcove was small, draped in red velvet that smelled like cigars and old money. Sung-ho was on his knees. One hand braced against the wall, the other pressed to his chest. His eyes were black, dilated, terrified in a way that didn't match the sharpness of his face or the cold power radiating from his frame. He was dying. She dropped beside him, her knees hitting the floor hard enough to bruise. Her hands found his collar, yanking at the perfect knot of his silk tie, ripping it loose. His breathing was too shallow, his pulse too faint beneath her fingertips. The assassin's footsteps were close now. Leather soles on stone, slow and deliberate. Caitlin didn't have time to explain, didn't have time to warn him. She tangled her fingers in his hair, tilted his face toward hers, and pressed her mouth against his. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't gentle. It was survival. She whispered against his lips in perfect Busan dialect, her voice barely a breath. Machoso guro, 아니면 죽는다. Play along or you die. His body went rigid beneath her. His eyes, those black, dangerous eyes, locked onto hers with an intensity that felt like being burned alive. For a heartbeat, she thought he understood. For a heartbeat, she thought he would fight with her. Then the paralysis took him. His pupils dilated further. His breath stopped. His hand fell limp against her waist, and the assassins rounded the corner. Caitlin didn't move. She kept her lips pressed to his, kept her body draped over him like they were lovers too drunk to care, like they were nothing more than another scandal in a room full of scandals. She felt the men's eyes on her, felt their disgust, their amusement. One of them laughed. 누군가는 우리보다 훨씬 좋은 밤을 보내고 있는 것 같네. Looks like someone's having a better night than we are. The other snorted. 미국인들, 품위가 없군. Americans. No class. Their footsteps receded. Caitlin didn't breathe until the sound disappeared entirely. Only then did she pull back, gasping, her hands still tangled in Sung-ho's hair. His eyes were half closed now, his face slack, his body heavy against hers, but he was still looking at her. Even as the neurotoxin dragged him under, even as his consciousness flickered like a dying flame, his gaze never left her face. And in that gaze, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Not gratitude, not relief. Suspicion. He thought she'd done this to him. He thought the kiss was the poison. Before she could speak, before she could explain, his eyes rolled back. His body went limp. Security flooded the alcove. Voices shouting, hands grabbing, radios crackling with panic. Someone yanked her backward. Someone else screamed about protocol. Caitlin's voice was drowned in the chaos. Her explanation died in her throat. Because the manager was there now, his face red with rage, his finger jabbing toward the exit. Lewd misconduct. Assaulting a guest. You're done. Get out. She tried to argue. Tried to tell them what she'd heard. What she'd seen. What she'd saved him from. But no one was listening. They ripped the badge from her vest. Shoved her toward the service elevator. Threw her out into the rain-soaked alley behind the Sapphire Tower like she was trash. Like she was nothing. Like she hadn't just traded her entire livelihood to keep a stranger's heart beating. The door slammed shut behind her. Caitlin stood there, shaking. Her uniform soaked, her knees scraped, her lips still tingling from the kiss that had saved a life. She had no idea that the man she'd saved didn't remember her warning. She had no idea that when he woke up, he would remember only the taste of her lip gloss, the scent of her perfume, and the paralyzing certainty that she had been the one to poison him. She had no idea that within hours, a black order would be issued with her face on it. Find the waitress. Alive. She has answers to give. And as Caitlin trudged through the rain toward the bus stop, her phone buzzing with a termination email, the news alert lit up her cracked screen. Gang war erupts in Los Angeles. Korean Mafia Don survives assassination attempt. She had kissed a monster to save his life. Now that monster was coming for her. Welcome back, my survivors and shadow walkers. Before we step into his world, make sure you've chosen a side. Hit subscribe, press like to seal it, and tell me where you're watching from. I want to know how far the dragon's reach extends tonight. From gala lights to rain-soaked docks, every click keeps these secrets alive. Every comment proves you belong here. So find your sanctuary, silence the world, and brace yourself. This story doesn't let anyone leave untouched. Let's begin. The rain fell like judgment, cold and merciless against Caitlin's skin as she stood in the alley behind the Sapphire Tower. Her uniform clung to her body, soaked through, the white shirt now translucent against her dark skin. She could still taste him, expensive cologne mixed with terror, the ghost of his breath against her mouth. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The service door had slammed with such finality it still echoed in her chest. No severance, no questions. Just the manager's face twisted in disgust as he'd ripped the badge from her vest like she was contaminated. Like saving a man's life was somehow more obscene than letting him die on imported marble. She pressed her back against the brick wall, trying to catch her breath, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The Korean phrases still looped in her mind. The dragon falls in 60 seconds, and the way his eyes had looked at her in those final moments before consciousness left him. Not with gratitude, not with understanding, with accusation. Her phone buzzed. The termination email had already arrived. Effective immediately. Lewd conduct, assault of a guest, a permanent mark on her record that would follow her to every restaurant, every catering company, every desperate job interview in a city that didn't forgive mistakes. Caitlin pushed off the wall and started walking. The bus stop was 6 blocks away. Her feet ached in the cheap heels she'd polished that morning, when the biggest worry in her life had been making enough in tips to cover Chloe's physical therapy copay. The news alert lit up her cracked screen. Gang war erupts in Los Angeles. Korean Mafia Don survives assassination attempt at Sapphire Tower. Her stomach dropped. The photo showed police tape, ambulances, men in suits being escorted out in handcuffs, and there, partially obscured, but unmistakable, was the alcove where she'd kissed him, where she'd saved him. Jung Sung-ho, the dragon. The man whose empire stretched from Seoul to the West Coast, whose name was whispered in Koreatown with the kind of reverence reserved for gods and monsters. She'd had her mouth on his, her hands in his hair, her body pressed against his while poison tried to stop his heart. Caitlin's knees buckled. She caught herself on a street lamp, her breath coming in short, panicked bursts. She hadn't just kissed a stranger. She'd kissed a crime lord, and he thought she'd tried to kill him. Across the city, in a safe house that didn't exist on any map, Jung Sung-ho woke up gasping. The room was white. Walls, ceiling, sheets. Sterile as a surgery suite. Medical equipment beeped softly beside the bed. His chest felt like someone had crushed it under a boot. His throat burned. But he was alive. The memory came in fragments. The gala, the numbness spreading through his limbs. The woman, dark skin, dark eyes, lips that tasted like cheap cherry gloss and desperation. The weight of her body on his. The whisper in his ear he couldn't quite remember. Then nothing. Just the fall into black water. Minjun sat in the corner, his face grave. His second in command, his brother in all but blood, the man who'd stood beside him through 5 years of war. "You're awake." Sungho's voice came out ruined. "What happened?" "Poison. Neurotoxin in your champagne. The doctors said you shouldn't have survived." Minjun stood, moving closer. His eyes were dark, unreadable. "Do you remember anything?" Sungho closed his eyes, tried to grasp the fragments. A woman. She was. The memory sharpened into focus. Her hands on his face, her mouth on his, the paralysis taking hold while she held him down. "She kissed me, right before I went under." Minjun's expression didn't change. "A kiss?" "The poison," Sungho said, his jaw tightening. "She delivered it through the kiss. I felt it spread from my mouth, down my throat. She knew exactly what she was doing. It was a lie his brain had constructed to make sense of the senseless. The neurotoxin had been in his drink, absorbed through his stomach lining minutes before she'd ever touched him. But the human mind needs villains. And his had chosen her. "A waitress," Minjun said softly. "Black. American. The security footage shows her in the alcove with you before you collapsed. The hotel fired her for misconduct." Sungho's hand curled into a fist against the white sheets. His rings were gone. Someone had removed them while he was unconscious. He felt naked without them. Vulnerable. The sensation ignited something dark and territorial in his chest. "Find her." Already in motion. Minjun's voice was smooth, practiced. "Every contact we have in the city is looking. She won't get far. I want her alive." Sungho sat up despite the protests of his body. His muscles screamed, but he ignored them. Pain was an old friend. "I want to know who sent her. I want to know who else is involved." And then, his voice dropped to something barely human. "Then I want to watch her bleed for every second I spent dying." Minjun nodded once. "Consider it done." After he left, Sungho stared at his reflection in the darkened window. His face was pale, shadows carved deep beneath his eyes. The dragon tattoo on his neck seemed darker somehow, more alive. He touched his lips, still feeling the ghost of her mouth against his. She'd looked terrified. He remembered that now. Her hands had been shaking. But fear didn't mean innocence. Fear just meant she'd known what was coming. He would find her. He would make her talk. And then he would erase her from existence. In a different part of the city, Minjun sat in his car outside the safe house and made a call. The voice on the other end answered in Korean. "Status? He believes the woman poisoned him," Minjun said quietly. "He's issued a black order. Every soldier in the organization is looking for her. And the real assassins? Dead. Disposed of." Minjun's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. "But we have a problem. I reviewed the security footage. The woman. She reacted when the assassins spoke. She turned her head. She understood Korean. Silence. Then, she's a witness." "Yes." Minjun's jaw clenched. "Which means she needs to die before Sungho finds her. Before she tells him what she heard. Can you reach her first?" Minjun smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "I already have people moving. She's a waitress. Poor. Desperate. She'll surface soon enough. And when she does," he let the sentence hang. "One more casualty in a gang war. No one will ask questions." "Good. The dragon cannot know the poison came from inside." "Not yet." Minjun ended the call. He stared at the safe house window where Sungho's shadow moved behind white curtains. His oldest friend. The man who'd saved his life a dozen times over. The man he was now actively betraying. Loyalty was a commodity. And Minjun had been bought years ago. Caitlin made it home just after midnight. The apartment building was a crumbling relic in a neighborhood where sirens were lullabies and gunshots were punctuation. She climbed 4 flights because the elevator had been broken since July. Her legs felt like lead. The door to 4C was already unlocked. Chloe was still awake, her wheelchair positioned in front of the television, her dark curls falling across the pillow she used for lumbar support. She looked up when Caitlin entered, her smile bright despite everything. "How was the fancy party?" Caitlin forced her face into something neutral. "Fine. Made good tips." The lie tasted like copper, like fear. "You're soaked." Chloe frowned. "What happened?" "Just rain." Caitlin peeled off her wet vest, hung it on the back of a chair. The apartment was small, One bedroom they shared, a kitchen barely large enough for one person, a bathroom with tiles that had been cracked when they'd moved in 5 years ago. But it was theirs, safe. Or it had been. She checked her phone again. 3 voicemails from bill collectors, 2 missed calls from unknown numbers, and the news article, still glowing on her screen. Young Sung-ho's face stared back at her. Sharp cheekbones, cold eyes, the kind of face that belonged on marble statues or wanted posters. She'd saved that man, and now he was going to destroy her for it. "Kate?" Chloe's voice was soft. "You okay?" "Yeah." Caitlin locked herself in the bathroom before her sister could see her cry. She turned on the shower to mask the sound and sank down onto the cold tile, her body shaking with sobs she couldn't control. She'd done the right thing. She'd saved a life. And the world was punishing her for it. Outside, 3 stories below, a black SUV idled at the curb. The driver watched the window where the light had just turned on. He lifted a phone to his ear. "Target confirmed. 4th floor. Do we move?" The voice on the other end was Min Jun's. "Not yet. Watch. Wait. I want to know her patterns, who she talks to, where she goes. When we take her, it needs to be clean." "Understood." The driver settled in for a long night. Inside his coat, the silencer was already attached to his weapon. He didn't know why the woman needed to die, didn't care. In this business, curiosity was fatal. You followed orders. You collected payment. You went home to your family and pretended you sold insurance. Above him, Caitlin Stewart had no idea she was already being measured for a grave. The blacklist moved faster than disease. By the next morning, Caitlin's name had been flagged in every hospitality database in Los Angeles. Lewd conduct. Fired for cause. The digital scarlet letter that made her unhireable in the only industry she knew. She spent 3 days sending applications into the void. Catering companies, hotels, even fast food chains. Every single one came back with the same automated rejection. "We regret to inform you." The rent was due in 6 days. Chloe's medication refill was 3 days overdue. The physical therapy bills were already in collections. And the refrigerator held 1 carton of eggs and half a gallon of milk that smelled questionable. Caitlin stood in front of her mother's jewelry box. The last piece inside was a necklace. Gold, delicate, with a small sapphire pendant. Her mother had worn it on her wedding day, had touched it for luck before every deployment, had pressed it into Caitlin's palm the night before she died, whispering, "For emergencies." This counted. The pawn shop on Florence Avenue had bars on the windows and a door that buzzed when you pushed it. The man behind the counter barely looked up when Caitlin walked in. She placed the necklace on the scratched glass display. "How much?" "How much?" He examined it through a jeweler's loupe, his expression bored. "150. It's worth at least 500. "Not to me." He pushed it back toward her. 150. Take it or leave it." Caitlin's fingers closed around the chain. The sapphire caught the fluorescent light. She thought about her mother's face, the way she'd smiled despite the pain ravaging her body, the way she'd made Caitlin promise to take care of Chloe no matter what. "Fine." She released the necklace like it was burning her. "I'll take it." The man counted out bills, worn, crumpled 20s that felt dirty against her palm. She folded them carefully, tucked them into her jacket pocket. The buzzer sounded as she pushed back through the door into weak afternoon sunlight. She didn't notice the black SUV parked across the street. She didn't see the 2 men who started following her when she turned toward the bus stop. She didn't realize she was being hunted until the alley. It happened fast. One moment she was walking past a boarded-up laundromat. The next she was being grabbed from behind, a hand clamping over her mouth, her body being dragged backward into the narrow space between buildings. She tried to scream, but the hand tightened, cutting off air. Her feet scraped against concrete as they hauled her deeper into shadow. 2 men, both Asian, both wearing the kind of suits that didn't belong in this neighborhood. One held her while the other pulled out a gun. Black metal. Long silencer already attached. No hurry in his movements, just professional efficiency. "Nothing personal," he said in English. His accent was slight. "Soul, maybe." Wrong place. Wrong time. Caitlin's vision tunneled. Her heart hammered against her ribs like it was trying to escape her chest. She thought of Chloe, alone in the apartment, waiting for her to come home. She thought of her mother's necklace, now belonging to a pawn shop owner who'd never known its history. She thought of the dragon's eyes as he'd looked at her in those final seconds before unconsciousness. Dark, accusing, furious. The gun rose, aimed at her forehead. Then the world exploded. The first shot didn't come from the silenced weapon. It came from behind them, a crack of sound that echoed off brick walls. The man holding the gun jerked, blood blooming across his shoulder. He spun, trying to locate the threat, and 2 more shots rang out in rapid succession. Both men dropped. Caitlin stumbled backward, her mouth still covered by a hand that was no longer attached to a body. She ripped it away, gasping, her eyes wild. The alley entrance was blocked by 3 new figures, men in black suits, identical to the first 2 but different somehow. More polished, more dangerous. The one in front stepped over the bodies without looking down. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. When he spoke, it was in English with a Korean accent. Caitlin Stewart? She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at the blood pooling around the dead men's bodies. Answer, the man said. Not a request. Yes. Her voice came out broken. You're coming with us. I didn't. She backed up against the wall. I didn't do anything. I don't know what's happening. Please. The scarred man nodded to his companions. They moved forward with practiced efficiency. One of them pulled out a black bag. Caitlin tried to run, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. Shock had turned her muscles to water. The bag went over her head, plunging her into suffocating darkness. Hands gripped her arms. She was lifted, carried, her screams muffled by fabric. A car door opened. She was shoved inside. The engine roared to life, and Caitlin Stewart disappeared from the streets of Los Angeles like she'd never existed at all. The drive lasted forever, and no time at all. Caitlin couldn't see, could barely breathe through the bag. She tried to count turns, to memorize the pattern of stops and starts, but fear made her brain skip like a damaged record. All she could think was that she was going to die, that these men, whoever they were taking her somewhere remote to finish what the others had started. The car finally stopped. Doors opened. She was pulled out, her feet stumbling on uneven ground. Industrial sounds echoed around her. Metal, machinery, the distant hum of traffic. A warehouse, maybe. Or a factory. Somewhere no one would hear her scream. They walked her forward. Her shoulders hit a door frame, then another. The quality of sound changed, became enclosed, intimate. They were inside. Someone cut her hands free, shoved her down into a chair. The bag came off. Caitlin blinked against sudden light. The room was small, concrete walls sweating with moisture, a single bulb hanging from an exposed wire. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness beyond the light's reach. The air smelled like rust and old fear. The scarred man stood in front of her. Behind him, his 2 companions flanked the door. All 3 were armed. All 3 watched her with the empty eyes of men who'd killed before and would kill again without hesitation. Do you know why you're here? The scarred man asked. No. Caitlin's voice shook. I didn't do anything. I'm nobody. You kissed Jung Sung-ho. Her breath stopped. I was trying to save him. There were men. Assassins. They were going to. He doesn't remember it that way. The door behind them opened. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Jung Sung-ho entered like a knife being drawn. All sharp edges and lethal intent. He looked worse than he had at the gala, pale. Shadows carved beneath his eyes, but his suit was immaculate. Black silk that caught the light. White shirt open at the collar revealing the curve of his dragon tattoo. He moved like something that had crawled out of a grave and wasn't quite finished dying. His eyes found Caitlin, locked on, and the hatred in them was so pure it felt physical. Leave us, he said to the guards. His voice was rough, damaged. The voice of a man who'd been poisoned and survived through sheer fury. The scarred man hesitated. Sir, now. They filed out. The door closed with a sound like a coffin ceiling. Caitlin was alone with the dragon. And the dragon looked like he wanted to burn her alive. Sung-ho circled her slowly, predator assessing prey. His footsteps echoed on wet concrete. He didn't speak, just watched her with eyes that had seen too much death to be moved by one more. Caitlin's hands gripped the arms of the chair. She wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. Wanted to scream, but no one would come. So she sat, trembling, waiting for the blow she knew was coming. Who sent you? His voice was soft, deadly. No one sent me. I told you. You put your mouth on mine. He stopped in front of her, leaned down, bracing his hands on the chair arms, caging her in. His face was inches from hers. She could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could smell his cologne mixing with something sharper. Antiseptic, maybe, from whatever hospital had put him back together. You whispered in my ear. You held me down while the poison worked. And now you want me to believe you're innocent? I am innocent. Desperation made her voice crack. I swear to God, I didn't poison you. I was trying to. He grabbed her jaw. Not hard enough to bruise, but firm enough to make her breath catch. His thumb pressed against her lower lip, the same lip that had touched his 3 nights ago. This mouth, he said quietly, almost killed me. Do you understand that? I died. For 30 seconds on that floor, my heart stopped. And all I could remember was the taste of you. Caitlin's eyes burned. Then remember this too. Remember that I warned you, I said. Her voice broke. I said, play along or you die. Something flickered in his expression. Confusion, suspicion. He released her jaw, straightened. What language? Korean. She wiped her eyes angrily. Busan dialect. I told you to play along. I was trying to hide you from the assassins. You don't speak Korean. Yes, I do. The words came out sharp, edged with hysteria. My father was military, stationed in Busan for 4 years. I grew up there. I speak it better than I speak English. Sung-ho stared at her. Processing. His hand moved to his jacket pocket. Drew out a gun. Not the kind with a silencer. This was something heavier, older, personal. He checked the chamber with practiced ease. The sound of the slide was obscenely loud in the small space. You're lying. I'm not lying. Caitlin shot to her feet. The chair clattered backward. I heard them. 2 men in the service corridor. They said the neurotoxin was active. They said the dragon falls in 60 seconds. They said no witnesses. And then I saw you, and you were. Her voice broke. You were dying. So I did the only thing I could think of. He aimed the gun at her head. Point-blank range. His hand was steady. Prove it. What? Speak Korean. Now. Or I pull this trigger and we both find out if you bleed the same as everyone else. Caitlin's mind went blank. Then the words came tumbling out in rapid-fire Busan dialect. The language of her childhood. The songs her father had taught her. The insults she'd learned from neighborhood kids. You're a stubborn, arrogant fool who'd rather kill an innocent woman than admit you might be wrong. You think you're a dragon, but you're just a scared boy playing at power. I saved your life and you're going to murder me for it. Because your ego can't handle the fact that you needed saving. The gun didn't waver. But his eyes changed. The fury bled into something else. Shock. Recognition. Horror. Say it again, he whispered. The assassins. What they said? Caitlin repeated it. Word for word. The exact phrasing she'd overheard. The dialect markers that placed the speakers as professionals. Probably ex-military. The casual tone that said they'd done this before. Sung-ho lowered the gun. His hand shook. Barely, but enough for her to notice. He took a step back. Another. His shoulders hit the wall and he stayed there, staring at her like she'd risen from the dead. You saved me. Yes. Tears were streaming down her face now. I saved you. And you kidnapped me. You were going to kill me. For doing the right thing. He was silent for a long moment. Then he raised the gun again. Caitlin flinched. But he wasn't aiming at her anymore. He was checking the safety. His movements mechanical. When he spoke, his voice was hollow. There's a leak in my organization. Someone close to me tried to have me assassinated. And you. He looked at her, really looked at her, seeing past the waitress uniform to the person beneath. You're the only person who can identify them. I told you what they said. That's not enough. I need faces, voices. I need you to go through surveillance footage. I need you to. He stopped, cursed in Korean. I can't let you leave. Caitlin's stomach dropped. What? The people who tried to kill me know you were there. They saw you in the alcove. They know you heard them. He holstered the gun beneath his jacket. The moment I release you, you're dead. They'll kill you to eliminate the witness. So what, I'm your prisoner now? You're under my protection. He moved to the door, knocked twice. It opened immediately. The scarred man appeared. Take her to the penthouse, north wing. Post guards outside her door. Sir, do it. The man nodded, gestured for Caitlin to follow. She didn't move. You can't do this. Sung-ho turned back to her. In the harsh light, she could see the toll the poison had taken, the way his skin stretched too tight over his bones, the tremor in his hands he couldn't quite hide. I just did. You have two choices. Stay with me and live, or leave and be dead within 24 hours. His smile was terrible. Choose. Caitlin thought of Chloe, alone in the apartment, waiting for her. My sister will be protected. I'll have her moved to a secure location. Medical care. Everything she needs. He stepped closer. You saved my life, Caitlin Stewart. Now I'm going to save yours, whether you want me to or not. The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a building that didn't officially exist. No name on the directory, no listed address. Just a private elevator that required a keycard and a retinal scan to access. The scarred man, whose name was Jay, she'd learned, escorted her up in silence. The doors opened onto luxury that felt obscene. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. White marble floors, art that belonged in museums. The kind of wealth that didn't just whisper, it screamed. Jay led her through the main living area. Furniture that looked like it had never been sat on. A kitchen that gleamed with unused appliances. To the north wing, he opened a door. This is yours. The room was bigger than her entire apartment. King-size bed with silk sheets. Attached bathroom with a tub that could fit 3 people. A walk-in closet that echoed. Through the window, Los Angeles spread out like a blanket of lights, beautiful and unreachable. Mr. Jung will send for you when he's ready, Jay said. Don't try to leave. The guards have orders to. To what? Caitlin turned on him. Shoot me? To keep you safe. His expression didn't change. There's a difference. He left. The lock clicked from outside. She was alone. Caitlin sank onto the edge of the bed. The silk was cool against her skin. Everything in this room cost more than she'd made in a year, and it was a prison. She thought about Chloe. Wondered if Sung-ho was telling the truth about protecting her. Wondered if her sister was scared. If she understood why Caitlin hadn't come home. The phone in her pocket was dead. Battery drained hours ago. Even if it worked, who would she call? The police? And tell them what? That a crime lord had kidnapped her but was also keeping her alive? Hours passed. The sun set. The city transformed into a sea of light. Someone brought food on a covered tray. Expensive dishes she didn't recognize. Wine that outweighed her rent by several zeros. She didn't touch it. Couldn't. Her stomach was a knot of fear and confusion. Around midnight, the lock clicked again. Sung-ho entered carrying a first aid kit. He looked worse than before. His shirt was unbuttoned, revealing bandages wrapped around his torso. His hair was damp like he'd just showered. Without the armor of his suit jacket, he looked almost human. Almost vulnerable. You're not eating. He set the kit on the dresser. I'm not hungry. You need to eat. I need to leave. She stood. I need to see my sister. I need to know she's okay. She's fine. I had her moved to a private facility 2 hours ago. Medical staff on site. Security around the clock. He opened the kit, pulled out alcohol wipes. She's safer there than she's ever been. Caitlin wanted to scream at him. Wanted to claw at his face until he understood that safety without choice wasn't safety. It was captivity. But the exhaustion was crushing her. 3 days of fear had hollowed her out. Why are you here? She asked instead. I need you to look at something. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen. Security footage filled the display. The gala. I've been reviewing every angle. I need you to identify the men you heard. He sat on the edge of the bed, patted the space beside him. An invitation. An order. Caitlin hesitated, then sat, maintaining a careful distance between them. The phone was heavy in her hands. The footage showed the service corridor. 2 men in tuxedos, their backs to the camera. She watched their body language, the way they moved, the gestures they made. One of them turned slightly, his profile catching the light. Her breath stopped. That's him. The one on the right. She paused the video. He's the one who said the dragon falls. Sung-ho leaned closer to see the screen. His shoulder brushed hers. She felt the heat of him even through their clothes. Felt the way his body tensed when he recognized the face. That's one of Min-jun's men. Who's Min-jun? My lieutenant. My second in command. His voice had gone flat, emotionless. My brother. The betrayal was written in every line of his body. Caitlin watched him process it. Watched the realization that the person he trusted most had tried to have him killed. For a moment, he looked lost. Young. Human. I'm sorry, she said softly. He laughed. It was a terrible sound. You're apologizing to me? After everything I've put you through? You thought I tried to kill you. I understand why you... No. He took the phone from her hands, set it aside. You don't understand. I hunted you. I was going to torture you. I had men tracking you. Ready to. He stopped, closed his eyes. I almost killed you in that warehouse, put the gun to your head and almost pulled the trigger. But you didn't, because you spoke Korean. He opened his eyes. Looked at her. Really looked at her, not as a target or a witness, but as a person. My mother spoke that dialect. She died when I was 14. I haven't heard it from someone who wasn't born in Busan since. His hand lifted, moved toward her face, then dropped. Like he'd remembered he didn't have the right to touch her. You sounded like her. In that moment, you sounded like home. The vulnerability in his voice cracked something in Caitlin's chest. This man, this dangerous, powerful, terrifying man, was grieving. For his mother, for his murdered trust, for the life he'd had before poison and betrayal. I need your help, he said quietly. To find the others. To root out everyone involved before they try again. And I know I have no right to ask. I know you should hate me. But I don't hate you. The words surprised her even as she spoke them. I should, but I don't. His eyes held hers, dark and deep and full of something she couldn't name. Why? Because I've been where you are. After my mother died, after my father. She swallowed hard. I know what it's like to have everything taken from you. To not know who to trust. You made a mistake. A huge, terrible mistake. But you're trying to fix it. Sung-ho reached out slowly. His fingers brushed her cheek, gentle despite the calluses, despite the violence those hands had committed. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Probably not. Caitlin's breath caught. But you have it anyway. They sat there in the dim light, the city glowing behind them. Two people who'd been broken by different hands but fit together in their jagged edges. When he finally stood, moving toward the door, she felt the absence of his warmth like cold water. Get some sleep, he said. Tomorrow we start hunting. After he left, Caitlin lay back on the silk sheets and stared at the ceiling. She should be planning escape. Should be looking for weapons, for exit routes, for any way out of this gilded cage. But instead she found herself thinking about the way his voice had softened when he spoke about his mother. The way his hand had trembled when he'd almost touched her face. The way he'd looked at her like she was something precious, instead of something to be used. She was in danger. But not the kind she'd expected. Because somewhere between the warehouse and this moment, between the gun at her head and the vulnerability in his eyes, something had shifted. The debt between them was no longer simple. It was tangled, complicated, weighted with something that felt dangerously like connection. And Caitlin Stewart, who'd survived poverty and loss and 1,000 small cruelties, wasn't sure she would survive this. Outside her door, Sung-ho stood with his hand pressed against the wood. He could hear her breathing on the other side, could imagine her lying on the bed, her dark skin against white silk, her eyes closed, her guard finally lowered. He wanted to go back in. Wanted to finish what his hand had started, trace the curve of her cheek, learn the texture of her hair, discover if she tasted the same now as she had in that alcove when terror had been the only flavor. But he didn't. Because she was right. He didn't deserve her forgiveness. Didn't deserve the way she'd looked at him with understanding instead of fear. He was the dragon, the monster who'd dragged her into this world and chained her here. The least he could do was let her sleep in peace, even if it killed him to walk away. 3 days in the gilded cage, and Caitlin had learned the rhythms of captivity. Sung-ho worked from the penthouse office. Glass walls that let him see everything while revealing nothing. She heard his voice sometimes, speaking rapid Korean into phones, issuing orders that would reshape the city's underworld. She watched him move through the space like a ghost, always aware of her presence even when his back was turned. They'd spent hours reviewing security footage, frame by frame, face by face. She'd identified 2 more of Minjun's men. Each recognition had made Sung-ho's jaw tighter, his silence more dangerous. The betrayal was eating him alive from the inside. Tonight he'd called her to the main room. The city sprawled beneath them, a million lights that looked like fallen stars. He stood at the window, shoulders rigid beneath his black shirt, a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. "I need you to see something." His voice was hollow, dead. Caitlin crossed the marble floor. Her bare feet made no sound. She'd stopped wearing shoes inside. It felt wrong to track dirt through this pristine world. She stood beside him, careful to maintain distance, though the pull between them had grown stronger each day. A magnetic force neither acknowledged but both felt. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen. Security footage filled the display. But this wasn't from the gala. This was recent. Interior camera. Minjun's office. Timestamp showed yesterday afternoon. Minjun sat at his desk, speaking to someone off camera. His voice was too low for the audio to catch, but his body language was clear, relaxed, conspiratorial. He laughed at something, then the other person moved into frame. Caitlin's breath caught. The man from the alley. The one who'd aimed a gun at her head before Sung-ho's people had intervened. One of the assassins. He's been meeting with them for months. Sung-ho's voice was barely above a whisper. Planning. Coordinating. My brother. The word broke. He's been orchestrating my death since spring. Caitlin watched the footage, watched Minjun shake hands with the man who tried to murder her, watched him smile like they were discussing the weather instead of treason. "I'm sorry." She didn't know what else to say. "Don't be." He drained the whiskey in one swallow, set the glass down with controlled precision. "You showed me the truth. You saved my life twice now. Once at the gala, once by speaking. What will you do?" "What I have to." He turned to face her. The city lights behind him created a halo effect, making him look almost ethereal, almost safe. "I'll call a meeting, confront him, and then," his eyes were empty. "Then I'll bury my brother." "Computer," he said to the empty room. "Initiate Protocol 0. Revoke all clearance for Lieutenant Minjun. Reset penthouse encryption. No one gets in or out without my biometric override." Caitlin reached out without thinking. Her fingers brushed his wrist. Just contact. Just the warmth of skin against skin. There's always another way. Not in my world. But he didn't pull away from her touch. If anything, he leaned into it. In my world, betrayal only ends one way. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, frowned, answered in Korean, his voice sharp, demanding. Whatever the person on the other end said made his face go pale. He hung up, looked at Caitlin, and in his eyes she saw something that terrified her more than guns or warehouses or death threats. Fear. "What?" she asked. He turned the phone around. Video call queued up. His finger hovered over the accept button. "Minjun wants to negotiate. He said he has something I want." He pressed play. The screen filled with Chloe's face. Caitlin's knees buckled. Sung-ho caught her, his arm around her waist, the only thing keeping her standing. Her sister's eyes were wide with terror. Duct tape covered her mouth. Her wheelchair was visible behind her. They were in some kind of van. Industrial. Moving. Minjun's face appeared beside Chloe. He smiled. It was the smile of a man who'd already won. "Hello, Caitlin. I hope you're comfortable in Sung-ho's gilded cage. I hope you've been enjoying his hospitality." He stroked Chloe's hair. The girl flinched. "Your sister is very brave. She hasn't cried once, but I wonder." He pulled out a knife, let the blade catch the light. How long that bravery will last. Sung-ho's arm tightened around Caitlin. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. "My offer is simple," Minjun continued. "Open the penthouse security gates at midnight. All of them. Let me in, and I'll let her go. Keep them closed." He pressed the knife to Chloe's throat. Not hard enough to draw blood, just enough to make his point. "And I'll send her back to you in pieces." The video ended. Silence crashed over the room like a physical force. Caitlin couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only see her sister's terrified face, the knife against her throat, the promise of violence in Minjun's eyes. He's bluffing. Sung-ho's voice was calm. Too calm. He won't hurt her. She's his only leverage. "You don't know that," Caitlin twisted out of his arms. "You don't know what he'll do. He tried to kill you. He's killed others. I won't let him touch her." "How?" She was screaming now. "How can you stop him? He has her. He has Chloe, and she's innocent, And she doesn't deserve this, and Her voice broke. I can't lose her. She's all I have left. Sung-ho closed the distance between them. His hands cupped her face, forcing her to look at him. His thumbs wiped away tears she hadn't realized were falling. Listen to me. I will get her back. I swear on my mother's grave. I will bring your sister home safely. And if you can't, then I'll die trying. His eyes held hers, dark and infinite and absolutely serious. You saved my life, Caitlin. Now I'm going to save hers. But Caitlin could see the calculation in his expression. Could see him running scenarios, weighing odds, measuring risks. And she knew with the terrible certainty of someone who'd lost too much already, that he didn't have a plan, not one that guaranteed Chloe's safety. Min-jun had outmaneuvered them, had found the one weakness Sung-ho couldn't protect against, and now they were trapped in a game where the only winning move was surrender. Caitlin looked at the clock on the wall. 3 hours until midnight. 3 hours to decide if she was willing to trade Sung-ho's life for her sister's. 3 hours to figure out which loss would destroy her more completely. I need to be alone. She pulled away from his hands, his warmth, the false security of his promises. Please. Sung-ho let her go, watched her walk back to her room, watched the door close, and then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Jay, gather everyone. We're going to war. Inside her room, Caitlin pressed her back against the door and slid down to the floor. Her mind was racing. The security panel was in the main room. She'd watched Sung-ho use it dozens of times. Retinal scan plus a 12-digit code. She didn't have his eyes, but she had his trust. He'd shown her the code yesterday while explaining the system, had said it was so she'd feel safer knowing how the protection worked. He'd armed her with the one weapon that could kill him, and Min-jun knew it. Somehow he knew that she'd seen the code, that she could open the gates, that she had the power to deliver the dragon gift-wrapped and helpless. Caitlin looked at her reflection in the dark window. Her own face stared back, exhausted, terrified, backed into a corner with no good options. She thought about the gala, about the split-second decision to throw her body between a stranger and death. She'd thought that was the hardest choice she'd ever have to make. She'd been wrong, because this choice, this impossible, soul-destroying choice, was worse. Save her sister, condemn the man who'd become something dangerously close to salvation, or save the dragon, and live with Chloe's blood on her hands forever. The clock ticked forward. Midnight crept closer, and Caitlin Stewart, who'd survived poverty and loss and 1,000 small cruelties, finally understood what it meant to be truly broken. Midnight approached like an execution. Caitlin stood in the penthouse kitchen, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee she had no intention of drinking. Through the glass walls, she could see Sung-ho in his office, phone pressed to his ear, orchestrating something. War, probably. Violence. The kind of response a man like him deployed when threatened. But it wouldn't be enough. She knew that with the terrible certainty of someone who'd already lost everything once before. Min-jun had planned this too carefully. Had anticipated every move. Had known exactly where to strike to make her bleed. The coffee had gone cold. She poured it down the sink. Started again. This time she opened the cabinet where Sung-ho kept his private stash. Expensive beans from some plantation she'd never heard of, ground fresh each morning. Her hands were steady as she measured, steady as she waited for the machine to brew, steady as she reached into her pocket and pulled out the small packet she'd found in the bathroom medicine cabinet. Sleep aid, prescription strength. The label said 1 pill for insomnia. She crushed 3 into powder. Her reflection in the chrome coffee maker looked like a stranger. Dark skin, ashen, eyes hollow. The face of someone about to commit an unforgivable sin. She stirred the powder into the cup, watched it dissolve. Watched her last shred of integrity disappear with it. Caitlin. She spun. Sung-ho stood in the kitchen doorway. He'd changed into tactical gear, black on black, knives strapped to his thighs, a gun holstered at his ribs. He looked like death dressed in expensive fabric. Looked like the dragon everyone feared. I was making you coffee. Her voice didn't shake. Small mercies. You've been working all night. Something shifted in his expression. Softness, gratitude. The terrible vulnerability he only showed her. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. She held out the cup. Steam rose between them like smoke from a funeral pyre. You need your strength for whatever's coming. He took the coffee. Their fingers brushed. The contact sent electricity up her arm. Desire and guilt mixed into something toxic. He raised the cup to his lips, paused, looked at her over the rim. Jay is mobilizing everyone, he said. We've tracked Minjun's location. He's holed up in a warehouse near the docks. We're going in at 11:45, 15 minutes before his deadline. He took a sip. I'll have Chloe back before midnight. Caitlin's throat closed. And if something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong. Another sip. His eyes never left hers. I trust you, Caitlin. You were right about Minjun. Right about everything. I should have listened from the start. The words were knives, each one cutting deeper than the last. She watched him drink, watched the poison she'd given him slide down his throat, watched him smile at her. Genuine, warm, human, while betrayal pooled in her stomach like acid. I need to tell you something. His voice was lower now, intimate. After this is over, after Chloe is safe, I want. He stopped, set the cup down, frowned. I want you to stay. Stay? Here, with me, not as a prisoner, as... He swayed slightly, caught himself on the counter. Something more. Caitlin's vision blurred. Tears she couldn't afford to shed. Sung-ho, I know I don't deserve it. No, I've done nothing but hurt you since we met. But you. His eyes were unfocused now, pupils dilating, the drug working through his system like liquid night. You make me feel human again. Like I'm more than just the dragon, more than just... His knees buckled. She caught him. Barely. His weight dragged them both down to the marble floor. His head lolled against her shoulder. His breathing was slow, too slow, but steady, still alive. I'm sorry. She whispered it against his hair. Korean words from her childhood, the language of his mother. I'm so sorry. But she's my sister. She's all I have. I can't. Her voice broke. I can't lose her. Sung-ho's eyes fluttered open. For a moment he looked at her. Really looked at her. And she saw the exact second he understood what she'd done. The betrayal. The poison. History repeating itself in the cruelest possible way. What did you do? His voice was slurred, fading. What I had to. Caitlin. He tried to grab her wrist. Missed. His hand fell limp. Don't. Please. It's a trap. He'll kill you both. He'll... But the drug pulled him under before he could finish. His eyes closed. His breathing evened out. And young Sung-ho, the dragon of soul, the most dangerous man in Los Angeles, went still in her arms. Caitlin laid him down gently, straightened his limbs, pressed 2 fingers to his neck to confirm his pulse. Strong, steady. He'd wake up in a few hours with a headache, and the knowledge that she'd betrayed him exactly the way he'd feared from the start. She stood, walked to the security panel in the main room. The clock read 11:38, 22 minutes until Minjun's deadline. The retinal scan wouldn't work. She didn't have Sung-ho's eyes, but she had his code. Had memorized it while he'd explained the system, never imagining she'd use it like this. Her fingers flew across the keypad. 12 digits, each one a nail in her own coffin. The system beeped. Green lights cascaded across the panel. All security protocols disengaging. Gates opening. Motion sensors disabled. The fortress becoming a tomb. Caitlin pulled out her phone. Sent the text to the number Minjun had provided. It's done. He's down. Gates are open. Let her go. The reply came instantly. Smart girl, Doc 7. Alone. You have 15 minutes. She looked back at Sung-ho's unconscious form on the kitchen floor. Wanted to go to him. To explain. To beg forgiveness she didn't deserve. But there was no time. No words that would make this right. So she did what she'd always done. What survival had taught her. She walked away from the man she was falling in love with. Stepped into the elevator. Watched the doors close on the penthouse and everything it represented. The descent felt like falling. Like dying in slow motion. When the doors opened to the parking garage, she didn't hesitate. Just moved forward through the darkness, toward the car Jay had shown her days ago. A black sedan with keys in the visor for emergencies. This qualified. She drove through empty streets. Past closed shops and sleeping buildings. The city looked peaceful, innocent, like it had no idea that in its heart, a war was about to detonate. Dock 7 was industrial. Abandoned. The smell of salt water and rotting fish thick in the air. Shipping containers stacked like dominoes. Shadows everywhere. Perfect place for murder. Caitlin parked, killed the engine. sat in silence for 5 heartbeats. Then she opened the door and stepped out into her own execution. The dock stretched before her, wooden planks slick with rain. At the far end, illuminated by a single flickering light, she saw them. Minjun, Chloe, and 5 armed men. Caitlin walked forward, each step an act of faith, of desperation, of love for the only family she had left. "You came," Minjun smiled. It was the smile of a predator who'd tasted blood. "I didn't think you would. Thought maybe the dragon had convinced you to sacrifice the cripple for the greater good." "Let her go." Caitlin's voice was stone. "I did what you asked. The gates are open. Sungho's drugged. You have your opening, now let my sister go." "Of course," Minjun gestured. One of his men cut Chloe's bonds. The girl stumbled forward. Caitlin caught her, held her, felt the sobs shaking her small frame. "It's okay," Caitlin whispered. "You're safe now. I've got you." Such a touching reunion. Minjun's voice was poison, honey. "But I'm afraid there's been a slight change of plans." The men raised their weapons. Caitlin pushed Chloe behind her, stood between her sister and the guns. The same position she'd been in at the gala, protecting, sacrificing, choosing love over survival. "Loose ends, sweetheart." Minjun aimed his own weapon at her chest. "You heard things you shouldn't have, saw things you can't unsee, and I can't have witnesses walking around with that kind of knowledge." He cocked the hammer. "Nothing personal. You said you'd let us go. I lied." His finger tightened on the trigger. "Say hello to the dragon for me. Tell him I—" The gunshot cracked through the night, but the pain Caitlin expected didn't come. Instead, Minjun jerked, stumbled, a bloom of red spreading across his shoulder. Then the dock exploded with violence. From the shadows between shipping containers, figures emerged. Black suits, black guns, Sungho's men. Jay at the front, his face carved from fury. They moved like a tidal wave, like vengeance given form. The firefight lasted seconds. Minjun's men were good, but Sungho's were better, more trained, more loyal, more willing to die for their dragon. Bodies fell. Blood painted the dock. Caitlin covered Chloe with her body, felt the impact of bullets hitting metal, felt the vibration of violence all around them. Then silence. Terrible. Complete. Caitlin raised her head. 5 bodies. Minjun's men. Dead. But Minjun himself was alive. Wounded. On his knees. Jay's gun pressed to the back of his skull. And from the shadows, moving like smoke given form, emerged Jung Sungho. He looked like death. Pale from the drugs. Swaying slightly. But his eyes were clear. Burning. Fixed on Caitlin with an intensity that stole her breath. "You drugged me." His voice was soft. Deadly. "I had to." She stood, kept Chloe behind her. "He had my sister. So you betrayed me." He walked closer, each step measured. "Poisoned my coffee, opened my gates, left me unconscious and vulnerable. Just like I feared from the start. Sungho, I trusted you." The words were gutted, hollow. "Told you things I've never told anyone. Showed you parts of myself I keep buried. And you," his voice broke, "you sold me out. Again." Caitlin wanted to explain, to make him understand. But the look in his eyes said words wouldn't matter, that the betrayal had cut too deep, that some wounds never healed. Then Sungho turned to Minjun. "You thought you were clever, targeting her weakness, forcing her hand, but you made one mistake." "What?" Minjun spat blood. "You underestimated what I'm willing to do for the people who save my life." Sungho crouched down, eye level with his former brother. "She drugged me with a sedative I'd already replaced with a placebo 3 days ago. I've been watching her, saw the conflict in her eyes, knew she'd try to save her sister, so I prepared." Caitlin's breath stopped. "I wasn't unconscious. I followed her here, called in my men, set up the ambush." He stood, pulled out a blade from his boot. The metal caught moonlight. "And now I'm going to do what I should have done months ago." "Please." Minjun's voice cracked. "We were brothers. You said we were family. Family doesn't poison family." Sungho's hand didn't shake. "She saved the king. You touched the queen." The blade moved. Swift. Final. "There are no second chances in my world." Minjun fell. The dock drank his blood, and the dragon stood over his former brother's corpse without expression, without mercy. Then he turned to Caitlin. She saw her death in his eyes, saw the rage and betrayal and hurt she'd inflicted, saw the man she'd destroyed by trying to save him. He walked toward her, stepped over bodies, over the evidence of violence he'd orchestrated to save her despite everything. He stopped inches away, so close she could feel his breath. "You chose her over me." His voice was barely audible. "I had to. I know." His hand lifted. She flinched, but he only touched her face. Gentle, heartbreaking. "And that's why you're still alive." Then he collapsed, the adrenaline finally bleeding away, leaving his body to pay the price for days of fighting off the neurotoxin without rest. Caitlin caught him, held him, screamed for Jay, and as medics swarmed the dock, as sirens wailed in the distance, as her sister sobbed safe in someone else's arms, Caitlin held the dragon and wondered if she'd just saved him or destroyed them both. The hospital room was too white, too clean, sanitized violence dressed up as healing. Caitlin sat in the chair beside Sung-ho's bed, watching his chest rise and fall with mechanical precision. They'd hooked him to monitors that beeped softly, had run tests, had pumped him full of fluids to stabilize his heart after the strain of the last few days. The doctors said he'd be fine, that he'd wake up in a few hours, that the mixture of drugs and adrenaline had shocked his system but caused no permanent damage. They didn't mention the damage she'd caused, the trust she'd shattered, the betrayal that would live between them like a scar. Chloe was in the next room, private wing, security stationed outside, fed, bathed, given medical attention she desperately needed, safe for the first time in days. She'd asked for Caitlin repeatedly, but the nurses had been instructed to keep them separated until Sung-ho woke, until he decided what to do with the woman who'd poisoned him. Jay stood by the door, silent, watching. His expression was unreadable, but Caitlin could feel the judgment rolling off him in waves. She'd betrayed his master. In his world, that merited only one response: death. He knew. Caitlin's voice was hoarse. She'd been crying, couldn't seem to stop. He said he replaced the sedative, that he knew I'd try to save her. He knows people. Jay's response was curt. He understood what you'd sacrifice, what you'd destroy to protect your family. Then why didn't he stop me? Why didn't he tell me he'd already planned? Because he needed to know. Jay moved closer. Loomed. Needed to see if you'd choose him or her, if the debt between you was stronger than blood. And I failed. Caitlin looked at Sung-ho's pale face, the way his hair fell across his forehead, the vulnerability of unconsciousness. I chose her. You chose love. Jay's voice was surprisingly gentle. That's not failure. That's humanity. Something we forget in this business. Something he gestured to Sung-ho, has been forgetting for years. Until you. Before Caitlin could respond, Sung-ho's eyes opened. He blinked, focused, saw her, and the look on his face was everything: pain, fury, grief, and something else she couldn't name. Out. He croaked the word. Everyone out. Jay hesitated, then nodded. Left. The door closed with terminal finality. Silence crashed over them. Sung-ho sat up slowly, winced, pulled the IV from his arm with casual brutality. Blood welled. He ignored it, just stared at her with eyes that had seen her commit the ultimate betrayal and chosen to save her anyway. Why did you do it? His voice was destroyed. I told you I'd get her back. I was planning the extraction. I had men mobilized. I would have. I couldn't risk it. Caitlin's hands twisted in her lap. I couldn't gamble with her life. Not when I had the power to save her myself. By selling me out. Yes. She met his eyes. No apology in her voice. Just truth. By selling you out. By drugging you. By opening the gates and walking into a trap. Because that's what love looks like. Stupid. Reckless. Willing to burn the world if it means the people you care about survive. And I'm not one of those people. The words hung between them like an execution notice. I don't know what you are. Caitlin's voice broke. I don't know what this is between us. I don't know if it's Stockholm Syndrome or genuine connection, or just two broken people finding comfort in shared trauma. But I know. She stood, walked to the bed. I know that when I held you on that kitchen floor, part of me died. Part of me wanted to wake you up, to tell you the truth, to beg you to save us both. But I couldn't, because Chloe is innocent. She didn't choose this. didn't ask to be dragged into your world, and I couldn't let her pay for my mistake. Your mistake was saving my life. No, Caitlin shook her head. My mistake was falling for you despite everything telling me not to, despite knowing that people like us, from different worlds, different lives, we don't get happy endings. We get what we got, violence, and betrayal, and blood. Sung-ho was silent for a long moment. Then he reached out, grabbed her wrist, pulled her down to sit on the edge of the bed. His grip was firm but not painful, possessive but not cruel. I knew you'd betray me. His thumb stroked her pulse point. From the moment I brought you to the penthouse, I knew if Minjun found the right leverage, you'd sacrifice me to save her. That's who you are. Loyal to a fault, willing to destroy yourself for family. Then why keep me there? Why trust me with the security codes? Why? Because I wanted to believe. His other hand cupped her face, forced her to look at him. Wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, someone could choose me. Not because I'm the dragon. Not because of fear or obligation. But because I'm worth choosing. You are worth it. Caitlin's voice was fierce. You're arrogant and dangerous and you've done terrible things. But you're also honorable in your own way, and you saved my sister when you had no reason to. When I'd just betrayed you. That makes you more than the dragon. That makes you human. I'm not human. His voice was bitter. Humans forgive. I don't know how. Then learn. She leaned into his palm. Learn with me, because I'm not going anywhere. I can't. You've got Chloe under your protection. You've got leverage over me, just like Minjun did. So I'm stuck, trapped in your world. Might as well make the most of it. Something shifted in his expression. The fury bled away, left only exhaustion and the ghost of hope. You think this can work? Between us? I think it's already working. Has been since the gala. Since you woke up from poison and decided I was worth hunting instead of killing outright. Since I realized the monster everyone fears is just a man who's been hurt too many times to trust easily. She placed her hand over his heart, felt it beat. Strong. Alive. I think we're both too damaged to walk away now. I should punish you. But there was no heat in the words. Should make you pay for the betrayal. You could. Caitlin smiled. It was sad. Broken. Or you could accept that we're even now. You hunted me. I drugged you. Both of us made choices driven by fear and desperation. Both of us survived. That has to count for something. Sung-ho pulled her closer, until she was pressed against his chest, until she could feel the rhythm of his breathing, until their hearts synced. The debt between us, he whispered against her hair, is never going to be paid, not fully, because every time I think we're even, one of us saves the other again. It's an endless loop. Then stop counting. Caitlin's arms wrapped around him. Stop trying to balance the scales. Just accept that we're bound together, for better or worse, in blood and betrayal, and whatever happens next. He was quiet for a long time. Then he tilted her face up, looked at her with eyes that were finally clear. I want you to stay, permanently, not as a prisoner, as, he struggled with the word, as mine. I don't belong to anyone. You belong to me. His voice was dark, possessive, the dragon claiming his hoard. And I belong to you. Whether either of us like it or not. Then he kissed her. Not like the gala, desperate and performative. This was slow, deliberate, a promise made with lips and tongue and the slide of his hands into her hair. She kissed him back, poured everything into it, the fear, the relief, the impossible love that had grown in the spaces between violence. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. One condition, Caitlin said. Name it. Chloe stays protected, forever. No matter what happens between us, no matter if this falls apart, she's untouchable. Done. No hesitation. She's family now. And I protect family. Even when family betrays you? His smile was sharp, dangerous, beautiful. Especially then. 2 weeks later, Caitlin woke up in silk sheets that no longer felt foreign. The penthouse had become home in that strange way trauma locations do, familiar through repetition rather than comfort. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows. The city spread below like a conquered kingdom. Chloe's laughter echoed from the next room. She'd moved into the guest suite, accessible bathroom, medical equipment, a team of physical therapists who came daily. The change in her had been remarkable. Color in her cheeks, light in her eyes, hope. Caitlin pulled on one of Sungho's shirts, black silk that smelled like his cologne, and padded into the main room. Chloe sat at the breakfast table, arguing with Sungho about video games. He was explaining the mechanics of some strategy game in Korean while she fired back in English. The language barrier didn't matter. They'd found their own rhythm. "You're ganging up on me." Caitlin leaned against the doorframe. "That's not fair." Sungho looked up. His eyes tracked over her. Bare legs, his shirt hanging off one shoulder, sleep still clinging to her features. The heat in his gaze was immediate, possessive, but he banked it. "Not in front of Chloe. Your sister is a natural tactician," he said. "Reminds me of someone." "Someone stubborn and reckless?" Chloe grinned. "Exactly." Caitlin poured coffee. Real coffee now. She'd learned how he liked it, had memorized the ritual, had made peace with the domesticity of captivity. "I have a meeting this afternoon." Sungho stood, straightened his tie, back in his armor of expensive suits, rebuilding after Minjun's betrayal. "It'll take months to secure all the territory he compromised." "Need my help?" Caitlin asked. "Always." He crossed to her, kissed her forehead, a casual intimacy that still felt strange and perfect. "There's a new shipment coming in. Documents in Korean. I need you to translate." "I'm your translator now?" "Among other things." His hand rested on her hip, squeezed gently, a promise of what would come later. "My partner, my conscience, my—" "Your queen," Chloe interrupted. "Just say it already. You two are so obvious." Sungho laughed. The sound was rare, precious. Smart girl. After he left for his meeting, after Chloe went for her physical therapy session, Caitlin stood alone on the balcony. The city stretched endlessly. Somewhere down there was the Sapphire Tower, the alley where she'd almost died, the pawn shop where she'd sold her mother's necklace. All of it felt like another lifetime. Her phone buzzed. Text from Sungho. "The penthouse is yours now. Officially. Deed transferred. Key on the dresser." She walked back to the bedroom, found the velvet box, opened it. Inside was a key, platinum, engraved with a dragon wrapped around a rose. Beautiful, excessive, very him. Beneath it was a note in his precise handwriting. "The debt is paid, but I am not finished. S." Caitlin smiled, pocketed the key, went to the closet and pulled out the dress he'd bought her last week. Emerald green, the color of ambition and envy and new beginnings. She slipped it on, studied herself in the mirror. The waitress was gone. In her place stood someone harder, sharper. A woman who'd survived assassination attempts and betrayals and her own choices coming back to haunt her. A woman who'd learned that love in the underworld looked different, darker, more complicated, but still love. When Sungho returned that evening, he found her on the balcony. The dress, the key on a chain around her neck, her hair loose in the wind. She looked like something out of a painting, like a queen surveying her empire. He came up behind her, arms encircling her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. "You're wearing it. It's beautiful. It's yours. Everything is yours." His voice was low, intimate. "The penthouse, the protection, my organization if you want it. I don't want your empire." She turned in his arms. "I just want you. Complicated, dangerous, impossible you. Then you have me." He kissed her, slow, deep. The kind of kiss that promised forever even when forever was uncertain in their world. "What if I get tired of you?" "You won't." His smile was arrogant. "I'm too interesting." "What if you get tired of me?" His expression turned serious. "Impossible. You're the only person who's ever seen me, really seen me, and chosen to stay anyway. That's not something I let go of." They stood there as the sun set, as the city transformed from gold to neon, as the night claimed the sky and turned everything into shadow and light. Below them, Los Angeles hummed with life. Criminals and victims, hunters and prey. A million stories unfolding simultaneously. But up here, in the penthouse that overlooked it all, Caitlin Stewart and Young Sungho had written their own story. One that started with poison and survival and a kiss that saved a life. One that continued with betrayal and forgiveness, and the slow burn of two people learning that love in darkness looked different than love in light. One that would end, eventually, inevitably. With more blood, and more choices, and more impossible odds. But for now, in this moment, they had peace. Had each other. Had the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, the dragon and his queen could build something that lasted. "I love you." Caitlin said it simply. Without drama. Just truth. Sungho went still. Then he cupped her face. Looked at her with eyes that held galaxies of emotion he didn't know how to name. "Say it again. I love you. Even though you're a crime lord. Even though you kidnapped me. Even though this is completely insane. I love you too." The words were broken. New, like he'd never said them before. "Even though you poisoned me. Even though you betrayed me. Even though you drive me absolutely insane. We're a mess. We're perfect." He kissed her again. Harder this time. Desperate. Like he was trying to imprint himself on her soul. "And you're never leaving. Never? Never." His smile was dark, possessive. Everything she'd learned to crave. "You're mine now. The waitress is gone. The queen has arrived." And as the city lights reflected in the glass, as Chloe's laughter echoed from inside, as the future stretched uncertain and dangerous before them, Caitlin finally understood what she'd found in the shadows. Not safety, not redemption, but something better. Home. If this story of betrayal, sacrifice, and the dragon's obsession kept you on the edge of your seat, make sure to hit that like button. Did Caitlin make the right choice at the docks? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell. Because in this city, the next story is always more dangerous than the last.